78 days it took Nadine Dorries to resign with immediate effect. And we'll pause just for a moment to reflect upon this. This is how the country works now. You can cover yourself in disgrace. You can literally wake up in the morning, take a paint of disgrace out of your cupboard, a brush out of your drawer, paint yourself in disgrace, cover yourself in disgrace, both in the job and then in departing the job, and end up being rewarded by the UK media. It's quite incredible to think that that is how low we have been brought, largely by the continuing refusal to recognise the reality of all the lies surrounding Brexit and Boris Johnson. Dorries becoming like a sort of a desiccated poster girl for delusion and denial, up to the point where now newspaper editors and media barons have to reward her with more prominence because to do so, to recognise reality would be to admit the con that's been visited upon the country. Quite incredible. What did I say? How many days was it? 78, did I say? 78 days. Just imagine for a minute that Diane Abbott were to pledge that she was going to resign with immediate effect, and then 78 days later finally get around to sending a letter to the Daily Mail announcing it before it actually got sent to the Prime Minister. It makes a mockery of almost everything that we once, I'm not going to say held dear, almost everything that we once just took for granted. We just took for granted that politicians can't behave like that. And if they do, they get hounded out of town by the Fourth Estate. It is the job of the media to do that kind of thing. But here she is. I want to close today by waving farewell to the woman playing the role of the hunger-striking mother in the story of Boris Johnson, to Nadine Dorries. We've already listened to one of her greatest hits, which I used as evidence that perhaps this story in Australia about a woman being found with a brain-eating worm in her head is not actually the unprecedented scientific discovery that Australians are claiming it is. But I want to leave you with a couple more examples of just how awful this woman is and how welcome her departure from the political stage will be. And to be honest with you, we were spoilt for choice, and I've allowed myself one that's personal reference, but we'll begin with this moment of madness.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister recently, in the last 24 hours?
Why? Why are you asking me that question?
I'd like to know.
We've communicated.
I'm really confused. Is that a difficult question? I'm just asking if you've spoken to the Prime Minister in the last 24 hours.
We have communicated.
Okay. What has he communicated to you?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the extent of my communications with the Prime Minister. I mean, I've answered your question. We have communicated. What is your next question?
What's his mood?
I'd say his mood was very, very positive, extremely positive. I mean, onwards is one of his favourite expressions. I think he's very positive.
Has he changed?
Changed what?
His attitude.
To what?
To the way he runs the government.
Charlie Stayt, I tell you, doesn't get the respect he deserves. One of the absolute best in the business there on BBC Breakfast, dealing with someone who, remember, was drawing a salary at the time to both represent constituents and serve taxpayers. Although, to give Nadine Dorries credit, at the time, I think she was representing constituents, at least in some senses. But not turning up in the House of Commons for God knows how long is a fitting end to her so-called career. And I'll leave you with this little moment, which perhaps explains my own animus and something that I hope I never have to endure again in my entire career. If she'd said this in public, I could have taken her to the cleaners.
James O'Brien. I think if you search the number of times I've tweeted James O'Brien, I think you might find it's 2. If you search the number of times James O'Brien has persistently tweeted me, to the point where we had at my office a number of years ago, probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, had to write to Global complaining that his behaviour was stepping into the realms of harassment. That was at the point which I sent that tweet. If you search James O'Brien's tweets of me... I have searched that because at the other committee... Including the ones at the other committee, you said that you'd responded to abuse from him, and I have actually searched that. And I can't find this
abuse that you talk about. But I have found you asking for James O'Brien to get the sack. You also implied that he had mental health problems. You said, I don't think he's a well man. He needs removing from his platform abuse. And you said, I've had to, separate tweet, you said, I've had to email his employer a number of times. Now, I don't think it's appropriate for you as a politician to be trying to get somebody the sack. But let's move on to another tweet that you sent.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
So, Mr. Chairman, just what I'd say is that, as along with a number of female politicians, I am subjected to a small number of men who do tweet about me obsessively, aggressively, and pleasantly, and James O'Brien is one of them.
Well, I can't find those tweets that you mentioned, but here's something that you did retweet about, and I'll quote it. I believe James O'Brien of LBC fame is a hate preacher, a liar, a misogynist, a UK hater, and an apologist for Islamic atrocities. You're in no position to talk about James O'Brien saying offensive things about you. You tweeted that. I mean, apart from being actionable and defamatory, it's grotesque.
Can't really argue with that from John Nicolson there. Funny that we were just talking about how narcissists behave in an abominable fashion and then immediately, without even blinking, somehow manage to turn themselves into the supposed victim. Lying and libellous. Farewell, Nadine Dorries. May you never darken our doorsteps again.